Yeah, I have to start by also expressing my great dismay and irritation at the event that just happened where non-governmental organizations were kicked out of a CCW informal meeting. I've been coming to almost every CCW meeting since 1994. It usually means 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a year. And at the beginning of that, they used to make NGOs stay on the outside. They could only attend plenary sessions. But that all changed after a couple of years, and especially after the treaty banning anti-personnel landmines came into existence, and the power of and desirability of having non-governmental organizations involved in disarmament and humanitarian matters was so clear. So it has been really since about 1996 that NGOs have been welcome in every single CCW meeting, whether they were informal or formal, whether they were part of formal negotiations or loose talks. NGOs have always been welcome. And over the course of this week, and especially the last couple of days, dozens and dozens of states parties to the CCW have thanked NGOs and talked about the vital nature of their participation in this process and all that they have brought to the table. And then a session was about to get underway where they were to get down to sort of the real details in what the mandate of this meeting will be. The main outcome document of this meeting will be the mandate for work for next year. We've been giving a lot of input on that on the NGO side. And at the beginning of this meeting, the UK raised its flag and said that it was inappropriate for NGOs to be in the room and asked that they leave. And the chair put it to the rest of the room, and as Mary said, not a single other state spoke up in our favor, which was surprising to us, both the perfidious act by the UK as well as the silent response from other states, most of whom are also states parties, for example, to the Mine Ban Treaty and the Convention on Cluster Munitions. About 90% of the people in the room are also part of those conventions, and in those conventions we're woven into the fabric of it in such a way that we participate in every single meeting that has ever happened on those. So this is something that we are considering extraordinary and hoping that it's not any kind of precedent. Certainly will not be a precedent for other fora, but within the CCW, we're now wondering, of course, one, why they kicked us out of that meeting. What are they in there discussing now that they don't want us to hear, that they've allowed us to hear during the first 2 years of discussions on these issues? And also, are they trying to set a precedent for limiting our participation in the future on this issue? Very, very concerning matters. I'm in a bit of an odd position here in that I was asked to speak about the mandate, about the outcome document. We thought by this time on Friday we would know what the content is going to be. They were supposed to have finished their discussions on lethal autonomous weapons yesterday and had this informal meeting last night, in fact, to which we were invited at the time. But it all fell behind time, and so they were just getting to it now. So we don't know what the mandate's going to be. So I can't speak with any kind of precision or certainty about what's going to be agreed to by the end of the day. They need to have a mandate agreed to by the end of the day today, a mandate that will describe what the work program will be next year. It seems certain that there will be a mandate and that mandate will allow for further deliberations, further discussions on lethal autonomous weapon systems, as they call them here in the CCW. Outside of the CCW, they're better known as fully autonomous weapons or killer robots. But it seems certain that there will be continued work in the CCW on lethal autonomous weapon systems. There are, unfortunately, quite a few countries who simply want to roll over the existing mandate. And what that means is it continues to be informal work and that they only devote 5 days to it. They devoted 4 days to it in 2014, 5 days to it earlier this year, and if they just roll over the mandate, it will only be 5 days in 2016 as well. There are some states that are pushing for more. As Noel mentioned, there are actually quite a few very positive statements made by governments, by delegations on this, many of whom have been echoing what we as NGOs have been calling for. That is, to step up the talks, to move from an informal status to a formal status. The normal way of doing that in the CCW is to create something called a group of governmental experts. That doesn't mean a whole lot. It's still the same people in the room. It's not just a small little group who does things. It's still all those, the big group of diplomats, but they take on a formal status, and there's documentation and translation of the documents. And most importantly, there's an expectation of an outcome. Once you create a group of governmental experts, you create an expectation of an outcome. When it's still informal, it's just a talk shop. This is an interesting topic, and we think it's important. Let's keep talking about whether we want to do anything about it. When you go to formal work in a group of governmental experts, that indicates you're planning to do something about it and starting to develop concrete ideas about what can be done. That's what we want, and we want them to do much more than 1 week. We're talking about at least 2 weeks. Even better would be 3 or 4 weeks. The history of the CCW is quite clear. If you talk about something 1 week a year, you keep having the same conversation over and over. But if you force yourselves to devote more time to it, then you advance the discussion from one meeting to the next. It does not appear that we're going to get a group of governmental experts. There have been too many states who have spoken against it. We get the feeling in the room that most would be happy to have a GGE, a group of governmental experts, but because this is a consensus forum, it only takes one person to object, and if you have a handful who object or more, then it's very hard to make it move forward, especially if among those objecting are the United States and Russia. So it doesn't look like a GGE. There's still some push to have it become formal in a different way other than the GGE. This is what, in theory, they're talking about down the hallway right now that we're not privy to. And there are some other proposals that have been put forward to adjust the mandate in some way that would demonstrate some kind of progress. But we don't know what that's going to be. Give us a call at 6 o'clock, and we'll see what the end result is. So the CCW started strong on this issue. They took this issue on really within months of when we launched our campaign, which burst this into the consciousness of most people when we launched the campaign to stop killer robots in early 2013. And by the end of 2013, the CCW had agreed to begin discussions on this. That was incredibly fast for the CCW. It usually takes years of them just thinking about an issue and talking about it in the coffee shop before they decide to do anything. And they jumped on this right away and had some very serious discussions early in 2014 and good follow-on in 2015. But it looks like they're hitting the skids now. It looks like they're reverting to the usual CCW practice of slowing things down. And that's the exact opposite of what this issue demands, which is urgency. Noel mentioned the 3,000 plus artificial intelligence roboticists and other scientists who signed an open letter calling for a preemptive prohibition, echoing our call. In that same open letter, they talked about how these weapons could be a reality in years, not decades. The longer we get into this issue, the more deep we get into this issue, the more it seems that the talk we heard back in 2012 about it being 50 years or 30 years is no longer valid, that it looks like it could be much sooner that these are coming into being. And that could be the reason why some people want to go slow. Some states may want to go slow so that the research and development advances ever more close to the acquisition of these weapons. That's our concern, that if they simply maintain the status quo, if they simply roll over this existing mandate, that could signal that some people are still very uncertain about whether or not they want the CCW to truly work on this in a concrete way. Or it could signal that there are some states who are just happy to have it in the CCW so that it does go slow, so that it drags along for year after year after year. So we're calling for them to do more. If they simply roll over the mandate, that's still good in that it means the issue is still alive. If someone were to block it, and CCW stopped work altogether, that would be extremely unfortunate and negative. So any kind of ongoing work is positive, but we have a feeling that, as I said, CCW is reverting to form and failing to truly be responsive to the needs on this issue, responsive to the call of thousands of the true technical experts, the artificial intelligence experts, failing to respond to the call of more than 24 Nobel Peace Laureates, more than 140 faith leaders, high-level faith leaders, and many other groups who have joined our call for a preemptive prohibition on killer robots. So we're kind of in a little bit of a stay-tuned mode here because we don't know what's happening in the room right now, and we don't know what they're going to agree to this afternoon. But it should be done by the end of the day, and we'd be happy to give you a late assessment on it then.